Hey, good afternoon, everyone. So we're going to present about the interrelations among subtopics and discourses. We are from Home Group 5, consists of Kalisha Safa, Chen Kongwei, Ben Osman, Abdul Devasha, Sego Muhammad, and myself, Aliara Marita Putri. So the one we'll be presenting is me, Aliara Marita Putri, and Abdul Devasha. Okay, the first one is introduction. So Indonesia is actually the largest archipelago country in the world that has reached no less than 17,000 islands with an area of 4,500 kilometers square, and it lies between mainland Asia and Australia. So the islands are scattered along the equator, and that's why Indonesia has high biodiversity. In Indonesia is also known as to have a wealth of high species, including the rich variety, variation, and the uniqueness of genes of all species, as well as having a diversity of ecosystem as organism. And the country is known to have a wealth of high species, including the rich variety.
Next, I will be talking about subtopic one, which discusses the working system of Earth. Indonesia is the largest archipelago country in the world, which has no less than 17,500 islands, with an area of 4,500 kilometers per square, and it lies between Asia and Australia. So the location of Indonesia is the reason that Indonesia has a high biodiversity, which comes at number three after Brazil and Congo. And on the surface of the Earth, there are mountains that harbor the magma, partly covered by ocean, and beneath it hides the oil basin. In these areas, the gravity are lower than those of solid or dense Earths or layers. Complete information about Earth will make it easier for humans to manage the Earth's sustainability, which is the reason of this topic, understanding how the Earth works in depth. And the Earth has a wide or broad working system in which today we are living in and in experiencing in our day-to-day activities. And it is our responsibility to keep the environment secured and not harming it from our own activities. And the human activities may have major impacts on how the Earth will function. And this has been an issue, especially since the industrial era, when humans started to increase their activities, especially factories starting to build everywhere. This is one of the examples of how human activities may interfere with Earth's working system. There are different systems that we can discuss, such as carbon emissions from factories used in business and other human activities that hurt the Earth. And so, subtopic two will be focusing on working system of the atmosphere. So, Earth's atmosphere is very vital to the climate, and climate change is caused by the combination of greenhouse effects, various human activities, and variations in solar energy, as well as changes in sea currents and volcanic eruption. There are a lot of bad impacts for the climate change if this problem is not resolved or the temperature decreases in the near future. Many greater effects will happen in the future. And subtopic three is the structure and the characteristics of Earth. Earth can also yield minerals and rocks, which will be transformed into other types by weathering and erosion, melting, and exposure to heat or pressure. And Earth could also move its plates or its layers in its continents and ocean basins. So the Earth is constantly moving, as proven by historical recordings that Earth was actually once a huge continent called Pangea, and through years and years of evolution, we are now in our current state of continents, and therefore we have to agree to study the characteristics of Earth and the causes and how to stop these natural hazards by understanding how the Earth it moves itself. One of the main issues that can arise that we can talk about that has a relation to this is the the sea level in the Netherlands is always rising and how the Earth is always sinking at the same time. These types of issues are natural occurrences that humans must understand as well to prevent from mass destruction. Subtopic 4, ecosystem and biodiversity. So, biogeographically, the Indonesian archipelago is divided into two regions, which is Indo-Malaya and Australia, and among them is the Wallacea region. So the formation of these two areas is a result of of a tectonic plate shift, which is the background for the diversity of living things that exist in Indonesia, both flora and fauna, including the diversity of humans. It is beneficial for the ecosystem in regions in Indonesia because species diversity and environmental complexity make the ecosystem stable, that could not be easily destroyed by external forces or alien species. Species and local environment will also evolve in better and stronger direction because they have to adapt to various kinds of other species and external forces. Um, Before continuing, a good example that I can give is Kalimantan or Borneo, being one of the richest forests in the world. If the Borneo's forest itself is comprised of various plants and animals, and this diversity is the reason Borneo has been able to be one of not only Indonesia but the world's not sort of natural resource because it's dense forests and this diversity keeps a sustainable climate for Earth. So another example is the virgin forests of Sumatra often experiences forest fires without interference from human factors, which are mainly caused by the local environment and climate. So the resulting smoke will drift into Indonesia's neighboring countries, affecting their lives and environment. And in case of ensuring the safety personnel, we should not interfere too much with this phenomenon because it will strongly change the effect of the ecosystem in Sumatra Island. This is a good example on how humans can interfere with the Earth's natural process. For years, for millennials and for like thousands of years, Earth has been able to stay that way because of its biodiversity and the ecosystem that it built itself. And it's important to understand how biodiversity inside an ecosystem is important and how it's very important to Earth's sustainability in the future. Subtopic 5 is biogeography, which is basically the distribution of plants and animals on Earth. The difference between one ecosystem to another in biogeography is based on climate. So in biogeography, we can divide it into two ecosystems, which is land and water or sea ecosystems, which each has its own different biomes and its own vegetation, its own animals. And this diversity or specific type of plants and animals is caused by the climate of that certain area. So, in relation to the discourse, it fits perfectly as we are discussing Indonesia's biodiversity. Indonesia has a high diversity, however, a lot of human activities has decreased this biodiversity. Again, talking about Borneo, nearly more than half of its forests have been cut down and turned into sawit farms, and this causes less diversity in its vegetation, which causes an unstable temperature in the climate in the area, and it will eventually affect the climate change. And obviously, with the decrease of biodiversity, leads to unstableness inside the ecosystem, which then can lead to extinction. And on subtopic 6 is natural equilibrium systems. So from the previous subtopics, I have been discussing about the differences of animals, vegetations, and the climates that affect these differences in biodiversity. Now, subtopic 6 focuses on how Earth can restore itself through natural processes. There are different steps. The first step is primary succession, which is early stages of development where the ecosystem only has very small plants and very little water. And there's the secondary succession where the former ecosystem that is healing itself is experiencing interference in its growth. Interference in this context can also mean natural interference. For example, small grass on sand dunes, because this interference actually keeps the ecosystem stable. And the next step is facilitation, which is the process in which more living organisms start to inhabit the ecosystem, which is restoring itself to the ecosystem that it was before. So beyond that, there are also swamp successions as well as grassland successions. These are all successions that are specific to certain types of biomes and areas. And the importance of understanding natural equilibrium systems is that Earth has its own way of restoring itself. And humans must understand this process to further help it restore itself naturally, because as I have mentioned before, for thousands of years, Earth has found its own formula to restore itself. And by understanding this formula, we can stop interfering. We can help its natural process, and to stop it inevitably destroying Earth. Because human activities have gone beyond how much the Earth can handle, and again, it is important to understand all of these subtopics because it discusses different parts of the Earth's development process. And so it's important to understand this specific part as it is Earth's own natural process of healing. So, yeah, next.
So after reading the discourses, we can get a several important point from the discourses. So ellipsoid is one of the model of the Earth shape, which is based on the assumption that the density of the Earth is homogeneous. And the other point is Indonesia has high biodiversity, and it is because it is the island of in Indonesia are scattered along the equator, um, and Indonesia is also the largest archipelago. So, and the next point is biographically, the Indonesian archipelago is divided into two regions. The formation is a result of a tectonic plate shift, which is the background of the diversity of living things that exist in Indonesia, both animals, plant, and humans. And the next one is the structure of Indonesia's land, whether it is in biogeography and its biodiversity, is an example of several factors that support the welfare of living things, including humans who live in Indonesia. And then the smoke by forest fire incidents has started disturbing neighbor countries, and this phenomenon of a long drought in various parts of Indonesia will result in the lack of clean water and crop failure. And the last one is we need to understand this nature in we need to understand this nature in order to manage it properly and ultimately avoid the disaster that may occur only from natural factors. Next, please. Okay, so we're going to talk about the interrelation among discourses and the theories that have been explained before. So for the first subtopic that explain about the working system of the Earth, and the topic itself is mainly about the broad working system of the Earth and our responsibility to protect the Earth itself. So its relation to the discourses is that human activities do have a major impact towards how the Earth functions, and this can be related to the human activities of burning the forest. And then for the second subtopic, it is about the working system of the atmosphere, and the topic itself is basically discusses about the climate change happening related to the Earth. atmosphere, and it is mostly because of the greenhouse effect, human activities, variation in solar energy, etc. And its relation to the discourses is that the subtopic, which is about the working system of atmosphere, is connected with climate change, and then this then will affect the nature, such as the change in sea current level and accelerated melting of land-based ice and land subsidence. And for the third subtopic, so the topic is about the structures and characteristic of the Earth. The topic itself is about what does the Earth's interior consist of and its process like weathering, erosion, melting, and exposure to heat and pressure. And its relation to the discourse is that like the division of the Indonesian archipelago, it is like the subtopic discusses about the Earth plates and layers in continents and oceanic bases moving. Next, please. And for the subtopic 4 until 6, it actually focuses on the ecosystem on Earth and its biomes and how rich the biodiversity is spread throughout the Earth. There are different ways that the ecosystem can develop that relies on the area climate, and this is what creates biodiversity in vegetation and animals. However, there are also ways of healing that the Earth has, uh, as Devasha talked about before, that this healing process is a natural process that takes time for it to fully recover Earth itself. So human in the past centuries actually have been developing on a huge number that it has interfered with Earth's natural healing process many times that Earth has suffered more than it could recover. So by understanding the subtopic 4 until 6 and the discourses, the subtopic explanation of the different types of biomass, vegetation, land, and also succession process, we hope that humans can further understand Earth pattern and behavior to help further destruction that leads to human extinction. So the next one is group reflection. After reading the discourses and discussion on the previous forum that we have conducted before, we know that we need to understand its nature in order to manage it properly and ultimately avoid the disaster that may occur only from natural factors. And we came to acknowledge that all this time you always talk about how bad the impact is and not really take an action to stop it. But after learning this topic on the working system, on the big topic about the system of the nature we live in, we gain more knowledge about this nature and hopefully we can implement the knowledge and can lead to prevent those disasters continue to happen. So the last one is the conclusion. Next, please. Okay, so the conclusion, after all that we have been explaining, we may feel that the Earth we are living is very complicated, but worth studying. So by studying the knowledge of like ecosystem, biodiversity, evolution, precipitation, etc., we, we will have a better understanding of all aspects of the Earth. And we can also apply this knowledge to Indonesian ecosystem and biogeography. Furthermore, it will also signal us about the mind of environmental protection due to increasingly severe environment problem. So that's all for the presentation. I hope the information we can give you is can be implemented by you, and thank you from we are from group 5.
Thank you for listening.